Is Furina a pay-to-win character? Now, in Genshin there is almost never a situation where you have to spend money in order to clear the abyss, and this is more so the case for a character that is as strong as Furina as a baseline. But some characters get a lot stronger from getting their constellations and signature weapon, and in the past this has annoyed people time and time again. So let's find out how much better Furina becomes with her signature weapon and constellations. Let's start with the constellations, since this will allow me to contextualize some things I have to say about the signature weapon better. The constellation one is incredibly good. It allows Furina to generate 150 fanfare stacks right off the bat when she casts her burst, and additionally it increases the limit of the maximum fanfare that you can generate with the burst by 100. What's happening here is that this constellation one is giving your whole team a 38% damage bonus for free, and it is allowing you to get more maximum damage bonus. This will make the average damage bonus you get from Furina much higher, since by the time your carry enters the field, if you have a healer on the team, you should have around 80 to 90% damage bonus, which is enormous. To let you visualize more what this means, with Furina Constellation 0, the maximum amount of damage bonus you can get from the burst is 75% at maximum stacks, while with this Constellation 1, the average damage bonus you get will be probably higher. While it's not as good as something like Nahida's Constellation 2, the way this Constellation 1 works for Furina is very similar because it adds free damage to your team with basically no restriction. It honestly has a great shot at being the best Constellation 1 in the game, which has become a common trend with Fontaine. Characters are getting incredibly good Constellation 1s, which wasn't the case before. But yeah, honestly, if this was Furina's Constellation 2, I wouldn't be surprised because I would consider it on the same ballpark as other Archon's Constellation 2, so Nahida's Constellation 2 or Raiden's Constellation 2. But on top of this, she gets a Constellation 2 that is overwhelmingly strong. Just wow. There is probably no better way for me to praise this Constellation 2 than to say it previously was Furina's Constellation 6, and it shows. It comes with two effects. The first will increase the stacks you generate with HP changes by 250%. In other words, this means that the amount of stacks you generate will be the amount you generate at Constellation 0 multiplied by 3.5. Considering that with Constellation 1 you just need 250 stacks to get to this maximum, then with Constellation 2 you'd only need 71 or 72 stacks, which is ridiculous. As a result, you will be getting a 100% damage bonus on a team-wide scale very easily, and not only that, you will overcap on the maximum stacks very early in the rotation. But that is the point, because it ties to the second part of this Constellation 2. Yeah, there is a second part. For every stack over the cap that is generated by Furina's burst, this Constellation 2 will give her a HP percent bonus. This bonus has a cap of its own, which is 140% HP, which if reached will give Furina a massive damage increase. Luckily, you just need 400 stacks over the burst cap to cap on this HP bonus, which in normal terms is around 110 stacks generated as a baseline. All of this means that if you're able to generate 180 stacks with Furina's elemental burst, which if you have a team-wide healer on the team is pretty easy even in the first part of the rotation, you will be getting 100% damage bonus for the whole team and 140% HP bonus for Furina. From a purely practical perspective, however, the truly interesting part about this Constellation 2 is that it allows you to get the maximum damage bonus much earlier in the rotation. At Constellation 0, you kinda have to delay the usage of the team-wide heal because that will allow you to regenerate more HP percent lost and get more stacks at a certain point in the rotation, like the 8-second in the rotation, the 10-second in the rotations. These are the times where it's best to use the team-wide heals for stacks generation. On the other hand, the Constellation 2 makes it much more flexible, because even if you use the team-wide heal shortly after your Furina window, so shortly after the elemental burst cast, you will be getting a lot of stacks. This just makes her buffing capabilities consistently overpowered. The other part of the upside is that single target healers, so healers that only heal the active character, will now generate many more stacks, so they're much more usable in the context of Furina teams. Team-wide healers will still allow you to front-load the stacks generation more since they will heal more, and you will not have a problem where you need to switch around your party members to keep them above 50% with the active healers. So team-wide healers will still be more consistent, but active healers become much more of an option, and healers like Cookie or Bennett, who are pretty strong in terms of team possibilities, are very usable with Constellation 2. They're still usable with Constellation 0, but with Constellation 2, it becomes much more feasible. Honestly, I would say Constellation 2 Furina, so considering both the upgrades Constellation 1 and 2 provide for her, is the best Constellation 2 character we have in the game, Obviously, it is not a must to buy this level of investment for her, but if you felt that the Constellation 2s for Raiden and Nahida, for example, were not needed but were just very worth it, now it's even more worth it in my opinion. Constellation 3 is a very common talent level increase that will upgrade the elemental burst talent level and of course increase the maximum damage bonus you'll get from the burst. Pretty straightforward and good, even though getting even more damage bonus for the whole team at this point is a bit redundant because you probably already hit that point where you start getting less damage the more damage bonus you get, but it's nice. The Constellation 4 will give her an energy refund of 4 whenever the elemental skill either hits opponents or heals your characters. So regardless of what alignment Furina has at a given time, this Constellation 4 will be active, and these effects will have a cooldown of 5 seconds. This felt much better as a comfort constellation back when her elemental burst costed 70, but it's still an upgrade now, of course. I say the word comfort because back then energy recharge weapons like Festering Desire for the most part weren't enough to cover all of our energy recharge needs. On the other hand, with this constellation in play, Furina won't need more than 120 or 130 energy recharge on most teams, which means that if you use weapons like Festering Desire or Favonius Sword on her, part of the energy recharge stats they will give you will feel wasted because you won't need it. This means that unless you play her on a team where she needs like 200 energy recharge, this constellation will benefit more the weapons that don't have energy recharge stats. So, for example, their signature weapon, totally not done on purpose, right? Her Constellation 5 is the second obvious talent level increase, this time for the elemental skill, which is nice since her damage gets really relevant with the Constellation 2, so getting an increase to that is of course pretty good. The Constellation 6 is the previous Constellation 2, and I already talked about this in a previous video, but let's talk about this again because it got updated. This one will give Furina on-field relevance. It will make her great at dealing damage on-field. But the scam here for the people that just want to use Furina as a constant carry for the team is that it will last for 2 or 3 seconds a rotation. As a matter of fact, after she uses her elemental skill, 6 of her normal charge or plunge attack hits will get Hydro Infusion and HP percent scaling. Additionally, based on her current alignment, she will be getting different effects. The Uzi alignment, which is the one where she has the offensive version of the elemental skill which drains HP from the whole team, will be hitting the teammates by a percentage of Furina's HP every second. Meanwhile, the Numa alignment, which enables the healing elemental skill, will allow her to deal additional HP percent scaling damage on her normal charge and plunge attacks compared to the base version, and she will also be draining 1% HP from the whole team after every hit. Basically, what is happening here is that this Constellation 6 is kind of balancing the situation for Furina because it is adding the opposite effects compared to what she gets with elemental skill to her normal attacks on a specific alignment. She will be healing and draining HP from the whole team in both versions, which maximizes the amount of stacks she can generate early in the rotation. Again, this lasts just for 6 hits, so it is something that will only last 2 or 3 seconds for every elemental skill cast. Previously, the Uzi or Numa separated attack, so the one that is only useful to disable enemies' mechanics, counted towards the total of these hits. So in practice, what you'd get was only 5 hits of this increased damage. Meanwhile, in preload, they changed the wording of the Constellation 6, and now that attack doesn't count towards the total anymore, so you get the full 6 hits. Honestly, there is a lot of debate regarding how it's best to use this Constellation 6 for Furina in practical scenarios, because since we're now considering speedruns for Furina, because it is a given with Constellation 6 characters, it is pretty vague. The Usia version will allow you to generate more stacks with Furina alone, because she will be draining HP from the whole team through the elemental skill pads, and she will be healing more. Also, very important, the healing effects will stack. So if you hit the opponent 6 times in Usia version, then you will get a healing effect that will last for 18 seconds, and this completely replaces the needs of healers on Furina teams. But again, we're talking speedruns here, so finding the right balance between the stacks generation from Furina and the amount of damage she will deal is the best thing here. And since the Numa version allows her to deal more damage through her normal charge and plunge attacks, it is worth considering. Generally, a mixture of both seems the best bet here, since you can change the alignment dynamically by using her charge attack. This will give Furina a 3 seconds window where she can generate a lot of stacks and also deal a lot of front-loaded damage. Honestly, in speedrun scenarios, the way I see this working the best is by putting Furina on a team where she can be paired with another carry. So she does the first wave of damage, the first 3 seconds wave of damage, and then the carry enters the field with a lot of damage bonus. I guess her as the sole carry on a team is also a possibility, since you can use both Jean and Bennett together, both their elemental burst together, to generate enough pyro application to let her vape hits consistently, but it honestly doesn't seem any better than just using her with another carry like Newlette for example, or a pseudo carry like Constellation 6 Yelan. But speedruns are a matter of practice, so I can't tell just yet. We will see. Overall, her Constellations package is honestly busted, especially the first 2 Constellations. After that, they get relatively weaker but still great, and the Constellation 6 opens up for a different playstyle for her. In my opinion, she has probably the best Constellations in the game, and if you get her a Constellation 2, you will probably feel like you got a Constellation 6 character in terms of general power level. Having said all of this, let's jump to the signature weapon talk, something I already talked about in the full guide I made about Furina. On that video, I said that the signature is not that great of a pull on the Constellation 0 version of Furina, because at that stage, her team damage contribution is not that high. Basically, for that version of Furina, it wouldn't increase her total damage by much over a weaker option like Festering Desire, that is also a free-to-play option. However, once her total damage starts ramping up with the Constellation 2 and then the Constellation 6, then getting a strong weapon for her like the signature definitely becomes more worth it. Especially considering Furina's Constellation 4 makes Festering Desire, so her best free-to-play option, worse in the sense that its energy recharge substat is not needed as much, so it just makes the signature weapon a better pull. Basically, if you just go for Constellation 0 Furina, then don't pull for the signature, while if you go for the Constellation 2, then it becomes something worth considering, Constellation 2 at least. So, is Furina pay to win? No. But does she get incredibly stronger with paid investment? Yes.